Good morning. This testimony is not so much about my faith as it is about God's faithfulness and the power of prayer. I was born in Bismarck and raised on a farm northeast of there with 4 brothers. I was not raised in a Christian home, but there was a small Mennonite church and a small Baptist church in our area. Our family never attended church, but we kids were always invited to take part in the Christmas programs and vacation Bible schools at each church. When I was about 10 years old, one of my brothers and I attended a vacation Bible school in a small country schoolhouse. I remember getting down on my knees by that little wooden desk and asking Jesus into my heart. But because there was no teaching or nurturing at home, there was no spiritual growth. I attended country school until 8th grade, and then I went to town school in Regan. I graduated high school in 1963 and went on to cosmetology school in Bismarck. During that time, I attended a Lutheran church there. When Les and I started dating, we attended an evangelical free church, which was his home church. We were married there and we continued to attend there, but we were living far outside of God's will. We had a group of friends that we partied with every weekend. Only by the grace of God did we survive those few years. Though we lived an ungodly life, we still attended church each week. During this time, we were blessed with 2 little boys. We had moved to Wilton, and I had opened my beauty salon while Les attended college, but the partying went on. One day, as I was working in my kitchen, in my heart, I heard the Lord say, "This is not how I want these 2 little boys raised." That was the turning point for me. 1 John 1:9 says, "If we confess our sins, he is faithful and just to forgive us our sins and cleanse us from all unrighteousness." 2 Corinthians 5:17 says, "Anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old is gone, a new life has begun." Les graduated from college in 1971 and started his employment at TMI as a computer programmer, and we moved to Dickinson. We had 2 little boys and 2 more on the way. We started attending Hillside and have been here ever since. Our twins were born in March of 1972. Life was busy. That September, Leon, one of our twins, was diagnosed with spinal meningitis. He was in the hospital for 12 days in critical condition. That was our first experience of love and prayer support from our Hillside family. God's people prayed, and Leon was healed. In 1976, we welcomed our 5th boy to our family. I was a stay-at-home mom during that time and did some home child care to help our budget. When our youngest started school, I quit the child care and went to work for the school district. In September 1987, Les discovered a growth on the side of his neck. He was diagnosed with a rapidly growing lymphoma that had a 5% survival rate. The surgeon told us that there was a good chance the tumor was entangled with nerves and blood vessels and could be very hard to remove. I called several different prayer chains in town. When the surgeon came out of the OR, he said, "I made the incision and the tumor rolled out in my hand." God's people prayed and God answered. During this time, our pastor, Darrell Dockler, lived next door to us. He was my rock. The day we got results that the tumor was malignant, he was in Colorado at a pastor's conference. He called and talked and prayed with me, and then took the prayer request to the conference the next day and sent it home with 250 other pastors to take to their congregations. I also have a dear friend that called the 700 Club for prayer. Les had to have some serious chemo. The first tumor was the size of an orange. By the time we got to the oncologist 10 days later, the second tumor was larger than the first one. The next 9 months were challenging. It was an extremely stressful time. In the beginning, I had trouble dealing with the situation. I knew I had to let go of it and give it to God. Every morning, that old hymn, "Burdens Are Lifted at Calvary," went through my mind. God was asking me to give it to him. I did. I gave it to him every day, and every day I took it back. After about a week, I knew I had to let go. On my knees by my bed, I was finally able to give it to God. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still and know that I am God." I had to step back and get out of God's way so he could do what he needed to do. The next morning, the song in my head and heart was, "Great is thy faithfulness." My burden had been lifted and peace filled my heart. I was assured that Les would be healed, but we had to get through the treatments. In January, he developed pneumonia. The oncologist referred us to a lung specialist. He said it appeared to be viral, and if so, there was nothing he could do. I immediately called all our prayer chains. He did some testing, and when he came in to give us the results, he came into the room literally scratching his head. He said, "I don't understand this. It looks viral, it acts viral, but the results show it as bacterial." After 2 days on antibiotics, Les was much better. God's people prayed, and God answered. After all treatments were done and Les was cancer-free, I remembered Pastor Darrell saying what a terrible, wonderful, awful, beautiful time that was. The emotional, physical, and mental issues with the drugs were terrible, but the love and support of God's people was wonderful. Les has not had a questionable checkup in 38 years. When life got back to normal, I was at my desk at school when again I heard in my heart God's voice saying, "This is not where I want you. I want you doing childcare where you can teach about me." I quit my job and started childcare in my home. After several months, we rented a house downtown and moved my business there. We later purchased that building. God was faithful in providing good employees and growing the business. Later, we purchased a second building and expanded the business. In 1990, one of our boys had a serious motorcycle accident. Both of the bones in his left arm were broken. The EMT told me she was sure they would not be able to save the arm. I called the prayer chains. God's people prayed, and God answered. Today, Leon has a very strong left arm. 2 of our sons, Lauren and Lane, were both overseas, involved in Desert Storm. There were lots of anxious days, not knowing just where they were or how they were. Again, God's people prayed, and God answered. They both came home safely. 4 years later, our youngest son, Lex, had a hunting accident. While hunting with some friends, he got hit with some shotgun pellets. One pellet penetrated his left eye. He was treated at the hospital in Minneapolis. The pellet was too close to his brain to attempt removing it. They did surgery but left the pellet in his head. Our greatest concern was that he would lose the eye. He has limited vision in that eye, but they were able to save the eye. Again, God's people prayed, and God answered. In 2010, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. After surgery and some radiation treatments, I have been cancer-free for 15 years. God's people prayed, and God was faithful to answer. God has been so good to me. There are so many more instances of his care and love for me. My most precious memory was 40 years ago when all 7 of us were baptized on Easter Sunday. Living a Christian life is not easy. John 16:33 says, "In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world." Our pastor at our church in Texas experienced some very serious health issues this last year that kept him out of the pulpit for 5 months. As he spoke about it, he said, "No matter what we're going through or how bad it is, God is always with us." Hebrews 13:5 says, "I will never leave you or forsake you." I don't know what God has for me in the years I have left. When I wonder about the future, I always think of a young lady at our church in Texas. She was a school teacher and had 4 young children. Her husband died unexpectedly. She spoke of how hard their life was without him, but she said, "We'll be okay. We know how this ends. We've read the book. So whatever God has for me, I'll be okay. I know how this ends. I've read the book."